If you've ever thought to yourself, I'd rather just read about this than actually do it, you're not alone. The Enneagram 5 newsletter exists to help you move from knowing to experiencing. Every Saturday, you'll get insights designed to help 5s grow without overwhelm. Sign up for free today at enneagram5.com/newsletter or visit the link in the description. Now on to the show. So Cody.
Yep.
How often does your intuition tell you that I'm right?
Almost never.
So I don't know about you, Cody, but for me, I took a while to kind of come to grips with my intuition.
Yeah.
And that I have intuition and that it's the majority of my decision-making process and that I can trust it. There's a lot in there.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, good start. Let's expand on that. Yeah, that kind of sounds like a little bit of a dream, I think, for most 5s to be able to trust their intuition that much. I don't.
I mean, I'm getting there. I definitely have a long way to go. I think that I was kind of afraid of my intuition for a long time. I think part of it is I sort of belittled myself or maybe shamed myself for making decisions intuitively because often they would seem irrational in the moment. And I think that I was afraid of it because when I tried to listen to my intuition, I would often make decisions that didn't make sense, like logically.
Oh, okay, sure.
Which then meant if anyone ever asked me why I made the decision, I couldn't explain it.
Okay,
right. Yeah. So then I would feel like an idiot.
Yeah,
and so I would either try to ignore my intuition or try to hide the fact that I was making decisions based on my intuition. Part of that was when we were in the church.
Yeah,
I just said it was God's will, or God spoke to me.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, that brings up a lot of things for me, I guess. Yeah, because I kind of always assumed that's what people were meaning when they said that. It's like intuition and God get like easily confused because it feels somehow magical that we're like pulling this certainty out of thin air. But yeah, I get that, and it's so often just in direct conflict with your rationale. If you think what you're doing doesn't make any sense, right? If you can't explain it.
Yeah. So I'm curious, when you've made decisions like that, does it almost feel like sacrilegious or like?
What do you mean?
Like to being a 5?
Oh, yeah, because we were just talking about religion. I was like, wait, what? Yeah, for sure. I think that
like it betrays your 5-ness.
Yeah, like I feel like, well, I can't make a decision based on feeling. Like,
right?
How does that work? Yeah, I don't. It does feel like it's almost like my logical side is telling me don't trust that. Like you don't know where that's coming from. You don't know how to. Not only can you not explain it, you don't know where the source of it is. Therefore, we can't trust that because it could just be. And like I think also how often do we as 5s? I know that I have. You judge other people for being too emotional and making decisions based on emotions, right? So it's like that's what you think intuition is. At least I do. My brain like equates them the same. when on an unconscious level, when I'm just thinking about it, I'll think like following intuition is the same as somebody who's making emotional decisions, which is not the same thing.
So then how do you distinguish between making decisions based on your feelings and making decisions based on intuition?
I mean, I don't know. Sometimes it's really hard to know the difference. I think that you can, for me, I can, if I'm making an emotional decision or I feel like maybe emotions that are actually like irrational, I'm just getting too, worked up about a situation, and maybe those emotions are affecting a decision. The way that I would find that out is kind of like reverse the process. There's a point, I think, when if you do it all the time and you're constantly self-aware, that sounds a little bit woo-woo, I think, but like if you're constantly looking inward and trying to find ways to grow, and it's kind of becomes a regular practice, I feel like for me, the longer I've done that and the older I get, the more it's easier for me to tie emotions to decisions or whatever situation that's happening. I can go, okay, well, this thing is definitely causing me to want to go this way, and I can feel that connection to those emotions. And then maybe we should just hold off for a second. But I mean, like, to explain it in a logical way, I have no idea how my brain does that. Like, I do know the difference, though, if that makes sense. Like, I think we do, if we really think about it. Like, intuition is like writing a song that just you can write in 10 minutes and it just happens, and you're like, wow, I have no idea where that came from, but it's amazing and I love it, right? That's, for me, that's the same type of feeling where it's like this deeper, like, I can see why they say, why they call it a gut feeling. It feels like it's way deeper. It's like beyond your emotions. It's like inherited wisdom or something that's like informing a decision that feels like it was just, beamed down to you from the heavens. And it just feels like and almost sometimes it feels like a holy moment. It's just like, wow, this was something special, and it was much heavier, this decision that I feel, or this certainty that I feel about something. And I feel like it's the same when like you're creating something and it just like comes to you all of a sudden. I feel like it's probably a similar process in the brain.
So it's what you're saying then is it's basically a part of flow state.
Yeah. Do we all know what that is?
I mean,
you can explain what is flow state.
I don't remember the biological part of it, but it's essentially the idea that state that you get into when you are so present in the moment that stuff just sort of flows through you. And that whatever it is that you're doing or working on, it just comes out. That's what you were describing.
Okay.
And I don't know what's going on, in the body and in that, but the feeling of that is feeling almost connected both much more deeply within and also to something greater than yourself.
Kind of like taking shrooms.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, probably something similar. Yeah, I think I've been reading Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Way, lately, and it talks a lot about like trying to figure out on a creative level, trying to get to that place all the time where you're just absorbing, information as it passes through you and kind of taking what you can from it and sending the rest on. And I think that, yeah, it feels a little like that. Like, yeah, intuition is something bigger, I guess, than self. It feels like it's a certainty or a definitiveness that doesn't seem to come from the same place everything else comes from.
Maybe it comes from somewhere else.
Like where?
The intuition realm.
Thought you were going to say the intuition room.
Obviously.
Hey, we're like creating a Pixar storyline right now.
Over time, I've learned to trust my intuition a lot while making decisions, and sometimes I can still fall into the traps of overthinking while trying to make decisions. And when that happens, I usually don't make any big decisions and just step back and try to do some movement or something else that gets me back in my body so that I can get back in flow with my intuition. I find that my days go by more smoothly when I'm not overthinking or trying to use logic for everything and just trusting my intuition on what I'd like to do next. And I usually get way more focused and productive that way as well. And I find it harder to get things done when I'm trying to sort of do the energy calculus of how to best fit things together. And in the past, the outcome of trusting my intuition and not being able to explain it logically has been that I created something that, as far as I knew, no one else had created before. And there was still a little bit of tension between intuition and overthinking, but the intuition definitely won in the entire scenario, and I also got somebody to engage with what I created. And even though that was kind of scary because it was unexpected, it was also really amazing and something to be proud of at the same time. So yes, in short, whenever I trust my intuition, it surprises me with amazing new things to learn and new challenges to face and be proud of.
When I first read this question, I wasn't even confident that I have intuition, but I do. I just call it vibes or whims because I really only trust it on things like, do I trust this stranger that I just met? Or maybe I can see what this Enneagram 5 community is about. I am working on trusting it on some of the bigger things. I really wish I had when, a month into my current position, I knew that I wasn't going to be happy, but I let anxiety get in the way of looking for a new job. So now I actually applied to a position on a whim. And on the surface, it feels like it does align with who I want to be. But it's so far from the path that I expected. And so I'm grappling with, is my intuition telling me to go for it and I'm simply scared? Or is my desire to do this a reaction to hating where I am? I'm afraid that without drastically changing what I'm doing, I'll simply end up in the same place, only in a new location.
You want to hear my super crazy theory for what intuition could be?
Sure, I can always cut it out later.
Okay, so I'm not saying that I know or think that this is what intuition is.
Okay.
I'm just saying let's entertain the thought
Okay.
and maybe assign it a non-zero probability.
Okay.
Okay. What if intuition is temporally non-local?
Okay.
What if intuition is part of retrocausality?
You're just making up words.
I'm not.
Okay.
So
What is retrocausality?
retrocausality?
That's what I thought you said.
Now I can't say it for real. Retrocausality.
What? Okay.
So causing things backwards through time,
Okay.
like Tenet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm gonna
Okay.
have a Christopher Nolan moment here. I gotta make sure my brain is in that gear now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So what if it is our future self sending messages back to our past self?
If that's the case, then future self needs to get a life, because some of the things I feel intuition about are kind of small and menial. So I don't know. I feel like I've got too much time on my hands in the future.
So I have a hypothesis on that.
Okay. Butterfly effect.
I think that it's more about over time we have to learn to essentially tap into that part of ourselves and to more and more like amplitude.
Okay.
Right. And so, because if you think about it, let's just say that it is this way. It would be to the benefit of our future selves for our past selves to be more receptive to the messages. Right.
Okay.
So what if the smaller ones are the opportunities to experience following through with your intuition and then taking the path that your future self wanted you to take in a small way that gives like a quick feedback loop as a means of starting to train, like build that muscle?
I think that you tell me which streaming service that show is going to be on, and I'm going to buy it.
I've started writing like a novel in my head.
You should, yeah. That's what I was saying. You're like building a whole world right now, and I'm like, man, this should be a show. It should be a TV show.
Yeah, it's hard. So I will admit this now. I think I actually, even though I was scared to do it, I did want us to do the High Fives episode because there was a part of me that just wanted to get all that stuff out of my head.
Yeah.
But saying it out loud felt too ridiculous. And so by doing it in a High Fives episode, I could use that excuse of, oh, I was high. I didn't really mean it.
But you meant every word.
Every word. But I think about this, it's hard for me to explain since that first time I got high and the way that like my brain changed from that, because I have these moments when I'm not high because I don't really get high hardly ever anymore. It's really just with you, which is why we never hang out.
Oh, I'm such a bad influence.
Right. Oh no, I just get these like images in my head that it feels like an intuitive download, but it's stuff that it's really hard for me to explain. Like I see certain geometries and things that I think I've tried to explain to you before, but it doesn't really make any sense when it comes out.
Yeah.
But I'll see if I can explain. I'll see if I can make this make sense out of my head for a second.
Okay.
We'll do this in real time and see how it goes. So if we think of time, and anytime there's like a basic illustration of this, it like in a movie or TV show or something, it seems to always be this way. Like you've got a line, and then you've got a dot in the middle of the line.
Yeah.
Right. And the line is time, and the dot is now.
Yeah.
Right. And the dot moves along this timeline. Right. And I think that all of that is wrong.
Okay.
Or it's a 2D representation of like a 5D thing. Like,
yeah.
Right.
For sure. Yeah.
So in the way that this plays out in my head is like, we're not a dot. It's a gradient. And it's a gradient that's shaped like a toroidal sphere. So the everything bagel.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's almost like the ever present now collapses in on itself all the way down. Right. And so we're somewhere in that gradient.
Yeah.
Like in our present consciousness is somewhere in that gradient.
Yeah. It's like a version of the multiverse theory, right?
Not exactly.
Various timelines that are all like adjacent to each other.
No, it's not that. It's so it's almost like I should say that we're not moving across this line as if we're like moving through time on a line. It's like we're still kind of, and time is flowing past us and through us. Right. And so as time gets to this sphere, it's almost like a black hole, right? And it starts, it starts stretching wide, like at the top, but then as it goes down, it gets more and more I guess, stretched or compacted. And then you and I, like where we're at in this sort of consciousness level, we're somewhere along that gradient of like way down in or kind of more up here. Mm-hmm. And if we're also like multidimensional creatures where our consciousness is kind of at these higher levels as well, like octaves, then we have someone that's kind of up farther on that gradient that is the version of ourselves. All right.
Okay.
Just meaning they can see the horizon better. So it's like because we extend as this gradient, we're not just like this one point. There's like a going up that gradient is part of us, but it's far enough away from us that we feel that separation. But it has a different vantage point. And so in time, if you're thinking about time as flowing at different rates through this gradient,
okay,
right? It's at a vantage point where it's like if you're standing at street level, you can see 2, 3, 4 blocks. Mm-hmm. The person at like the 100th floor can see all the way, to the next state. Mm-hmm. Instead of thinking about what they can see in terms of like the distance and space, think about the distance and time instead. And so being up at that level gives you, it's like your gradient spreads out more so that you're experiencing more of the past and the future in this moment. It's just a widening of that aperture. And so therefore, there's a part of you that can see ahead, and there's a part of you that can extend back to the parts of you that are close enough on that gradient to touch it at this level that you and I are at right now. Does that make sense?
As much as it can. Yeah, I think so.
And so we're actually, we do the same thing to our past. We think of it as our past because if you think of it moving across the timeline, it looks like the past, but really it's just a lower sort of frequency at going down that gradient more. And so when you at this level that you think back onto a moment in your life, it's almost like you can send that visual of how you're interpreting it now, going back through the past, and you can actually affect the past, but it's kind of all happening at the same time, mm-hmm. but it's just a kind of further down that gradient. Does that make any sense? It's really hard for me. Like I can see it in my head, but trying to explain it out loud.
Sure. I guess my mind is kind of more latched onto like the Russo brothers MCU understanding of timelines.
I think it's wrong.
You don't think that you think somebody can actually go back in time and change right now?
That's what retro causality is, because now it's not a fixed point.
Yeah.
It's where now is where your experience at this consciousness level is at in the gradient. But at what point is it now and then? At what point is it now and in the future? Like you can't actually define that. You see what I'm saying? So like you can't measure that. So like how big is it? How big is now? Right? For some people now is really, really small, and for some people now is really, really big. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. It's a gradient that goes into the center of the toroidal sphere. And that's time passing through. And so when we think about, if we're thinking about our past isn't actually our past, it's the sort of lower level version of us experiencing those things.
Is there any other person who's ever said any of these things, or are you just pulling this out of thin air?
I don't know.
Had to be the 5 in the room and ask that question.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how else to explain it. Like this is what I'm saying. My life has been very, very weird since that happened.
Okay. How so?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I get these visualizations that I can't explain, but it's just I have this like deep intuitive sense that it feels more true than my previous understanding of how the universe worked. Like, it's almost like I'm like trying to transitioning from like that 2D to like a 5D, and it's hard because if you think about like what 4 or 5D is, you kind of can't conceptualize it as
sure.
Yeah,
we don't know. Yeah,
right.
3D is hard enough.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you think about it too, you can't actually conceptualize what it's like to be 2D.
No.
Right. So you could have a version of you that is 2D, and you as a you're connected. It's all this one sort of strand, but you have no concept of what the 2D version of you is like.
Yeah.
Same with like the 5D. You have no concept of what the 5D version of you is like, right? But it's all kind of you connecting at these different dimensions. Like different dimensions aren't different realms. They're different measurements. That's what dimension means. They're different, like basically, different measurements, different yardsticks.
Okay.
And so that's at least why I sense that like the multiverse, I don't think would work the way that it gets portrayed, especially like in the MCU.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard for us to wrap our brains around this idea of like everything is happening at the same time, but it feels like the past and the future because of this gradient of and where our like our 3D version of us is sitting in that gradient.
Have you ever seen the movie A Beautiful Mind?
Yes.
I just want to say that I think doctors could help you with these voices.
Damn
these
it, Cody.
images that because what you're saying sounds a lot like schizophrenia. The things that I'm feeling are more true than the reality of self.
You know, I have questioned myself, and especially in the last few years.
We'll keep an eye on that. But so back to the conversation.
So anyway, when I think about intuition,
think about time travel. Bet you didn't know you were going to listen to this kind of episode and go into this, did you?
As a type 5, I do not rely on emotional intuition. And I call it emotional intuition because based on my observations of other types, they have, they can observe their surroundings, they collect data, they make correlations, but for them, it translates in an emotional way, which they call intuition. And I think as a type 5, we act more logically. And while we might have an emotion that drives the data collection, by the time we get all the information and the correlations, it might be less emotional. So as a type 5, if I am relying on my intuition, what I'm really doing is just using my emotions to drive data collection. And then I might rely on that, but there have been times where I've had a strong emotional fear or anxiety that I've tried to convince myself was intuition, even though I could not find correlations and facts. And it has not led me to good places. It really just turned out to be anxiety. So I don't rely on emotional intuition for answers. I will use that emotion to drive fact-finding and then use those facts to drive my actions.
I am learning to trust my intuition more when making decisions. Normally, especially as a 5, I am really in my head. So a lot of times, especially when you're going with intuition, it just doesn't make sense logically. But there has been something recently that has happened that I've really tried to get more in tune with it. About 6 months ago, I completely changed careers. I was in the other career for over 17 years. I was comfortable, no big thing. I was just getting a little burned out, but not any big reason for me to kind of look elsewhere. Financially, it was really strong. And then there was this dream position that came up. And my intuition was, you know what? You got to go for it. Even though I wasn't fully qualified, I just had to go for it. And sometimes my logical brain kind of came back in there to say, hey, what are you doing? But when I went ahead and I got it, and I've been in the position for 6 months now, and it's been amazing. It's the best decision that I've ever made. It was one of the scariest decisions, but I really listened to my intuition, and I just kept moving forward.
Intuition has always been a hard one for me. I think it's difficult for women, especially because we're trained from an early age to act kind of opposite of our intuition, give hugs, be polite, always smile. And for me, that's not my natural state to give hugs and smile. You know, my affection isn't given and it's not on display. So I learned really young to stuff down natural intuition, but I do actually use my intuition quite a bit, and not necessarily trustworthy in the way that I can think about it and look inside and say, intuition, what do we feel like is the right choice here? It's almost like an ambush is better received, where I don't think about it too much, and whatever part of gut instinct that exists underneath the surface, if she can just throw a bag over my head and kidnap me, then those decisions are generally the right decisions. They're definitely the most fun. They're the ones filled with experiences and memories that make me smile. If I have too much time to think about it, then I snuff it out and can't tell anymore what it is that I wanted to begin with. So my answer is yes. And my best memories are intuition. But my answer is also no, because if you give me a moment to pause, then there's a battle. And we walk away from a lot of those battles.
I guess what I'm getting at, though, is like, I think it's important to not put intuition in a box.
Yeah.
Right? Across like all dimensions and all realms. Right?
You can make it as magical as you want to.
But there, just at a practical level, there are many times in my life where I didn't listen to my intuition, and I basically got out of alignment with myself. It's usually what ends up happening in some way.
Yeah.
I'm out of alignment, out of integrity. And then I end up going back and basically doing the thing anyway, but I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And I started actually listening to those little signals and viewing them as opportunities to practice following my intuition in a low risk way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I think about them now. And so I will say though, like it's such an underdeveloped muscle that it can be exhausting.
Yeah.
Like it really can. Trying to stay out of my head, get into my body for prolonged periods of time where I can be aware enough when that like small voice says, actually, you should do this.
Yeah.
You know, and then following through on it. Because I think a lot of times too, what we do is we dismiss that voice because it's not coming from that analytical part of our brain.
Yeah.
And then we're never actually training that muscle.
Yeah.
Do you have an example of when you've listened to your intuition and it turned out really well?
There's probably, I'm trying to think if there's any specific times that come to mind. I know that definitely things with like jobs, you know, like the last job that I had, I just had this, there was no talk of this at all, but I just had this feeling in my gut that it was like, get to lay off everybody. Like, I don't know why I felt that way, but I just like had this feeling. I mean, when I look back on it, I now know like my brain saw similar red flags to a different situation that I just had. So like all of a sudden my boxes were being checked in my subconscious that I didn't really realize. And there was just a day that I woke up and knew I had to leave. And so I started putting out, you know, job applications and just like it, but I was doing it with haste.
Right.
And so I just started doing it. And within a couple of weeks I had a job somewhere else. So I put in my 2 weeks, and then within about a month, everybody got laid off. And so I looked back and was like, I knew it. I knew it was going to happen. And I think a lot of times I wonder if that's also happened, where it feels like intuition in the moment, but you look back on it after a while and you see that like I definitely saw the signs. I didn't see the big picture. I only saw the small part in the moment. My brain was focusing really hard on, whatever was in front of me. But like when I think back, I had been checking boxes for a while on why that situation was going to happen. And so when like bigger things started to go on and I started to see similar patterns, I definitely I knew in my gut it was about to happen. So that was definitely one thing that sticks out. I wish I had like a really fun, creative example because I feel like that would be like, mystical and and nice.
My muse came to me.
Yeah. I don't know. I think in some ways I did kind of do that with some of the songs that I released this year, actually, because I did them with somebody I'd wanted to do stuff with for 12 years now and always wanted to work with him. And I was always too afraid to. I didn't feel like I had the right songs or whatever. And then it was just a certain feeling where I was like, this is it. Like, it's time to do it now. Like, I think this will be the moment that is the most growth and the most help to me and most beneficial. And yeah, I look back on it and was like, don't regret that decision at all. So it was exactly what I should have done. But to not have that definitive, like, yes, this is like that certainty of it, it was something that doesn't come to me very naturally. So yeah.
I have a working definition I've just thought of
Okay.
Intuition. I want to see what you think of it.
Okay.
Intuition is the voice you hear when your anxiety has finally quieted down.
Okay. Could use some polishing, but yeah.
Well, I just thought of it right now, Cody. Come on. Cut me some slack.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, when you turn down the noise, that's what's actually been there the whole time. Yeah, it's like maybe we feel it more when we are more in tune with ourselves and not feeling, because I also equate out of control emotions with anxiety because that's really most of the time what it is for me. And so, I think about if the opposite of that is being more in tune with self and more, it almost is like that becomes the more rational, logical self is the intuition. And so does that mean intuition comes from the most logical place? It's like, that's where only the information feed is. And that's where we get that actual intuition. Like, problem solved, fives, we could just be more logical and there's intuition.
I don't know if that's how it works.
Maybe. You think my thing is more crazy than the shit you've been talking about?
As soon as I said it, I was like, here we go.
No, I don't think you're right. That's too crazy. Oh, man.
There's another part about listening to intuition that makes me not want to do it.
Okay.
And I have to fight that. Like, it's part of the fear or that just tension, discomfort. And it's that moment or that period of time between after you've listened to your intuition and taken the action and then trying to figure out why.
Okay.
Like why you did what you did. Like there must be something that will come of this, and trying to do that, like making that meaning in that space. Yeah. And it's just this uncomfortable tension. And then there's that analytical part that's like, was that really your intuition? Like, should you really have done that?
Yeah.
Like, what was the point? Like, and just going down this whole rabbit trail and all these different possibilities, trying to find this explanation for why your intuition had you do what you did. And then you start to, like, for me, I start to feel like I am not in control, or I am like people are going to view me as not in control, and it can spiral like in that anxiety. And so then I'm just driven to close the loop, right? And then I can create meaning around it that isn't there, and so then I have to sort through all of that, and it's just this. It can be. If I get into that state and let myself go down that anxiety path, it can be really, really draining. And then I wonder if that's why I had to listen to my intuition so I could learn that lesson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That went a different direction. I was kind of thinking about like how maybe your logical side is the one trying to like, if it doesn't have meaning, then it doesn't matter. So you're like, you like stretch for meaning for things, but that your logical side is always trying to disprove it. But like, that's probably just out of fear of what it could mean if you do have, or decide. It's almost like believing in intuition is like believing in God. You know, you want to, like, it makes you not nobody is equal, but no five is equal in that way. Like some people are more accepting of the mystical sides of things and not, I don't know. Although I will say in the community that we have, you know, kind of built around this conversation that we're having here for the podcast, a lot more people are spiritual or like mystically minded or leaning than I would have thought out of a group of fives. So maybe I'm just a little sourpuss over here.
There might be, like the Enneagram itself might skew that. Just if you're interested,
misunderstanding.
If you're interested in the Enneagram, then you're probably more likely to be interested in the mystical, spiritual stuff.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
So it would be hard for us to have an Enneagram podcast that didn't attract those types of people.
That's true. Yeah.
So, you know, we posted on Instagram and in the community asking, do you lean on intuition in your decision-making process? And those were like the posts around intuition were some of our most engaged posts.
Yeah.
And I was just really surprised how every single person was like, yeah, intuition is really important. I use it to make decisions. I wish I could tap into my intuition more, but when I do it, you know, it's great. Like I was really, like I shouldn't have been surprised because that's how I feel.
Yeah.
But it was just surprising to get that confirmation, especially from other fives.
Yeah.
And because I always thought I was the weird one because I was the five who, you know, listened more to intuition, I think, and made decisions that way versus logic most of the time.
Yeah, for sure. It is kind of, I mean, yeah, it's definitely maybe it's just something that we all are more curious about than we let on because we're all fives and we don't want to be, you know, try to cover that up a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like there's definitely a lot of benefits to finding more space for intuition in your life and figuring out how to tap into it more often, more consistently. But I think for a lot of fives that are creative, I mean, we're all creative to some degree, but you know, from my personal experience, I feel like I think I've talked about it before, but there's this thing that I do with a bunch of songwriters every February where we try to write a song a day for a month. And obviously it's difficult to do, but the idea is to practice, you know, exercising those creative muscles, but also overcoming the perceived illusion of writer's block, that when writer's block is really just our excuse to not write, I believe, in my own personal life and experience. I don't think there is any such thing as writer's block. It's our ego telling us what's good enough. And so, you know, that's all it is. And so but when you remove that filter, I think that is kind of also the filter that blocks intuition because we're always kind of analyzing what's good enough to enter our brains. What is good enough to, you know, to be the reason why I do something, you know, whatever the thing is. And so I do that with songs. I do it with everything that I create. But I find that the best things that I'm the most proud of are the things that came out of those moments where I took that filter away and just decided I'm going to write this. It doesn't matter if it's for me, and maybe I give it to another artist, you know, whatever the case may be. Maybe it goes nowhere, and that's also okay. And I think giving permission for all of those things and not trying to judge what comes out of it is actually what gets me the best work. And I find that in every area of my life, that tends to be true. And I tend to stumble upon more creative moments, whether it's for my job or for making music or whatever. I find I stumble into those creative moments more often when I am trusting the part of myself that is kind of always in tune with what is, you know, what's like the core part of me, I guess.
I usually do trust my intuition. One example that comes to my mind is when making decisions. When I have just enough of information to save time and energy to avoid the analysis paralysis, I lean into my intuition to decide. The effects are mixed, 6 and half a dozen really. Rarely regret it, and it doesn't discourage me though. I'm just making the best decision at the time. The other example would be when the intuition pushes me outside my comfort zone and against my natural instinct to stay behind, observe and isolate. It pushes me to engage. Well, that's why I'm recording here.
Honestly, I find it a bit difficult to trust my own intuition and to separate it from other things like anxiety and self-doubt. I tend to lean more on my experiences and research I've done because, frankly, I just don't always fully grasp my emotions, and they can sometimes, not all the time, overwhelm me and really seem to cloud my judgment. I'm also afraid to trust my intuition for myself because I know if I act on it and it goes awry, it's absolutely 100% my fault. And I don't trust myself, mostly I think because of past experiences, and I fear making more mistakes just by acting on my intuition. I have noticed, though, that when I get a gut feeling about something or someone outside of myself, like my kids or my family or my friends, I'm more inclined to trust my intuition. I think this is like my mind feels clearer, which seems more reliable to me. I'm better able to recognize patterns and sort of inconsistencies in other people's situations. So when it comes to things outside my own experience, I actually often feel like a really strong sense of clarity. I will feel confident, and I trust my intuition will help steer me, or at least through me, the other person, in the right direction. Especially when I'm, advocating for others or standing up for someone. I feel like when it's outside of myself or making decisions for myself, it allows me to be more perceptive and just less bogged down by the mixed emotions and self-doubt that typically hold me back from making decisions for myself.
I've listened to my intuition a few times in my life, times that it sounded everything seemed so clear, and so it was just so crystal clear. And the biggest example is about 12 years ago, I had a calling to go to seminary. I left my job. I got a buyout from my company to leave because they were undergoing layoffs. And once I made that decision, everything just fell into place so easily. And seminary was just a wonderful experience, and it felt so right. And then I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And I still really haven't done anything. My life has been probably more interesting because I did that. Not better financially, definitely. I would have been better off financially if I had stayed in my job, but probably better off physically. My physical health has improved from then, but I still don't really know what I'm doing with the rest of my life. Other than that, I'm not working in the corporate life. So very different life that I've chosen by following my intuition, probably for the better, but who knows?
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier with those opportunities to kind of practice listening and following in your, in a low risk way in your day to day with those small things. And I think there is a body component of this, because when you follow your intuition, you kind of get that confirmation. There's a feeling in your body.
Yeah.
And your body remembers that. And so the more that you do that, the easier it is to get into that state on a more regular basis. And so it can compound on itself the more that you practice it.
Yeah, and also too, like all those things that sound cheesy to do that maybe we don't want to do them. Like maybe the one thing that you can do is just get out of your own way and give permission to explore the idea of intuition, and those steps will probably become more clear which ones you should take to get to that point. I think it's probably the best way. Because I mean, if there's something that we probably all have in common, I would think it's that our first step is usually just allowing ourselves to not look down on the idea of intuition and not discredit it just because we don't know how to explain it or understand it. And if you remove that element, you're probably going in a better direction towards being able to trust it more and hear it more.
Yeah, makes sense.
Cool. Well, we'll see you next week, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Hey, it's Josiah, and I wanted to say thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode and you're the type of person who likes helping others, would you do us a favor and share it with other people like you? If you found value in this conversation, they will too. I also want to give a special thanks to our community members who shared their voice with us in this episode. If anything in this conversation has resonated with you, or if you have any further thoughts or questions, I want to invite you to join our community of other people like you and continue the conversation at Enneagram5.com.